you in there, and it's very exciting. I think it's the first time that anyone in this space has done, a metaverse conference, and this is goes both ways, right? You can enjoy it on Zoom. You can also enjoy it in Decentraland, and we want to bridge these two as much as possible to give you a unique experience. So, one of the things that the advantages of Zoom is that you can ask questions, you can interact with the panelists, with the speakers, and the other thing we can do with Zoom is that, well, from time to time we might bring some of you on stage. So that's only if you want to be brought on stage. So over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to just give you the big picture on the conference and what you could expect today and how you can get the most out of it. And then I'm going to also show you what the agenda is and just kind of like some very simple Decentraland FAQs. So without further ado, let's talk about the Chatbot conference. So this is a 3-day event, right? Now, some of you have bought a 1-day pass, some of you have bought 2 days of passes, some of you got all 3 days. And the way we organize our conference is in a very specific way. So what we do is that on the first day, the Chatbot conference day, that's today, and it's starting right now, 9 a.m. And what we do today is we try to give you the big picture about chatbots, conversational AI, voice, and how this technology is being utilized by industry professionals, okay, by the industry leaders. Like, what are they doing it? How are they implementing it in their own companies and enterprises? How are they implementing it in new environments like the metaverse? And our first speaker is going to talk exactly about that. And it's very, very exciting because for the first time, I feel like chatbots and conversational AI is going to do something very, very creative. And it's going to expand on the enterprise/brand use cases. So the first thing we do is we try to give you on day one, we try to give you the big picture view. Okay, we're going to do that in our big picture panel. And then what this view is going to do is it's going to help you identify areas of opportunity. Where are enterprises getting the best ROI in conversational AI with digital assistants, etc.? Look, where is the value? Where are they getting the value? What use cases is it? And then we get to hear from practitioners, from many of the top industry experts. And once we identify these areas, like for example, customer service, sales and marketing, or the customer journey, this is just another more holistic way to think about it. Okay, NOU, conversational design, voice. Once we identify major use cases, internal use cases, HR, etc., then we do deep dives in each of these areas. And we try to bring forth the best insights in these areas. So you have an idea of what it looks like if your team or your business or your company is looking to explore creating a conversational agent in that specific domain. Okay, so now after we've identified these areas of value and opportunity, we do deep dives in each of them. Okay, we have a lot of the best speakers. They're going to be able to do these deep dives with us. So you're going to get a deeper understanding of how to and what it takes to bring forth and create a good bot within, let's say, customer service or within internal use cases like HR. Okay. Now, once you have that, once we have a deeper understanding of these use cases, what we do is we want to talk about how to start a project, how to bring it all together. And that's really, really important. So we will cover that as well. And that comes with the execution. So when you execute, it's a combination of knowing the technology, NOU, and it's also a combination of knowing conversational design. So that's day one. Day two is you take all that knowledge and you design a bot in our full day workshop, certified. And then day three, you actually build it, you take it out, that design that you created, you add some NOU to it using dialogue flow, and then you can have a bot that answers FAQ questions. So now let's look at today's agenda. So I touched on it quite a bit, and basically this is what the morning agenda looks like. This is the session. It's called the main stage. It's getting streamed live into the Decentraland. So there's two ways you could watch it. You could watch it on the Decentraland, you could watch it on Zoom, but make sure you mute one of them, otherwise you will have echoes. So we start out with Guy Gagnon. He's going to talk about how brands are bringing virtual characters to the metaverse. Very exciting stuff. Then we're going to talk about the big picture with the big picture panel. And then we're going to talk about how to leverage conversations for businesses, and that features Google. And then we're going to have a small coffee break. Then we're going to have conversational collaboration design with open dialogue. They're going to talk about how to set this up within your organization because, well, if you're going down this path, you need to know what team members to have, how to put the team together, and so on. And then we'll talk about voice bots. And then that's the morning session. And then we're going to do something very neat for the afternoon session. For the afternoon session, we have 2 tracks. So this is the first track. This is the main stage track. Now, in this one, we're going to explore a lot of customer service. We're going to explore some NOU with our 3 p.m. session, and then 0 to launch panels designed to bring all of it together for you. And then day 3, I'm sorry, the second track, it's a bonus track, okay? I think this is the one I'm most excited about. It's a live podcast, okay? Think of it as a live radio show where we do a number of fireside chats where people come on, like for example, Derek Bennett from Salesforce is going to be on it. We're going to have Kane Sims, Dustin from Bot Copy, and Hans Van Dam are going to be hosting it. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So you can jump in. That starts at 12 o'clock. So right during that lunch break, it starts. You could have lunch, or you could watch Dustin and Hans talk about bots with a number of panelists. So that's going to be very exciting. That's the agenda and what it looks like for that. And that runs from 12 to about 3:30. So it's about 3.5 hours. They'll bring some attendees on stage. And then at the end of the day, what we're going to do, so the conference content ends around 4 o'clock. That's when our 0 to launch panel ends. After that, 4:10, we're going to go and have happy hour in Decentraland. We have a cafe in there. It's very exciting, okay? And we're going to share the links with you so everyone's in the same realm. And then we're going to be able to dance. There's a DJ that's taking live requests, and that starts around 4 o'clock, and it's from 4 to 5. So we're going to have a virtual happy hour with each other. And last but not least, I want to share some of the sponsors with you: Open Dialogue, Core AI, Cognigy, AI Sarah, CDI, Personality NFT, and the Game of Life. I want to thank them because, well, they help make conferences like this possible. Now, if you want to upgrade your pass, you can do so. So if you go to chatbotconference.com, there's an option to upgrade your pass. So if you want to add a second day or a third day, or you want to get both days, you can now do that. And we've already given everyone a credit for today. So without further ado, let's see. Guy, are you here? Guy, if you could turn on your microphone.
I am. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. Very excited. This is going to be a great day. Great 3 days. Fantastic to hear everything that's going on in the agenda.
Yeah, I know. Me too. And when we first talked, like what you guys are doing, I always hoped that this would happen. And now it's kind of happening. And so I'm very excited about conversational AI and how this is going to merge into the metaverse. And I think that just by the people that are in Decentraland right now, playing around, walking around, they can kind of have this experience of what it might be like, what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think what we're seeing is really that difference between 2D and 3D, and the 2D experience that we might be used to for websites. And there's something that's a lot richer, a lot more colorful, a lot more real that is in Decentraland and indeed metaverses. But at the same time, I think it's important to put a little bit of context around it, which is what I want to cover a little bit today, and of trends that are rising up really quickly at the moment. But I feel that this is this is important, and there are a number of sort of reasons why in the past. So looking forward to this today.
Absolutely. So without further ado, it's your show.
Thank you. Okay, so hi everyone. Really great to be here today. As I said, I want to get myself set up here very quickly. Give me 1 second while I do that.
All right.
There we go. That's that one. And then there, and then perfect. There. So you should see this full screen. Yes. Can you see that, Stefan? Just to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. I can see it.
Okay, well, let's start. And I think, as Stefan already alluded to, it's great to be here. What I want to cover a little bit today is really the 3 C's of chatbots as I see it. My name is Guy Gadney. I'm CEO of Charisma. And what I want to talk about today is a bit about the past, which is important to be able to ground what is going on in some element of history, the present of where we are now, and a little look at the future of chatbots and how the 3 C's of character, context, and conversation here are the key pillars the virtual characters and digital humans need to have today to meet the brand requirements that we're seeing in the market. So in the beginning, we had computers, and generally they were good things. We as humans used them to speed up our work, to solve complex problems, and to control systems. However, this was politically on a global scale at the height of the Cold War, and it was noticed that if these computers were destroyed, then a country's infrastructure would be equally damaged. So, as many of you know, a combination of American academia and the military launched ARPANET as a way to connect these computers at Pentagon-funded research institutions over telephone lines. Purpose was to create a network without a central core so that it could survive any sort of attack and keep communications alive for all of us. Now, this was back in 1969, and by 1974, on its 5th anniversary, around September, which funny enough is around my birthday, but completely uncoincidental, or it is completely coincidental rather, this is what the network looked like across the US, with points of presence running across all of the US. And in essence, this is the same form that the internet looks like today, but on a much larger and global scale, as you might imagine. Naturally, as this exotic network started to grow, it captured the imagination of Hollywood. And many of you may recognize this 1984 movie, War Games, which highlighted the potential problem of networked infrastructures, namely here where a teenager hacks the nuclear control network and thinks it's a video game. Spoiler alert, leads to some very tense images of the Pentagon Center tracking missiles around, as reality is starting to be confused a little bit with digital world. But as with so much art and science fiction, life imitates it. And the line here from the movie here perhaps indicates some of the concerns that we have with the advances in AI being trained on zero-sum game situations, which is obviously a bit of a challenge as we move forward with AI in this much bigger world. Now, where does this all leave us with chatbots? Because actually, before all of that was going on, the first chatbot was released in 1966, 3 years before the internet. Eliza not only broke new grounds in the strange habit of giving chatbots female names, but also broke new grounds in believability. Eliza was not only a chatbot, but was actually a Rogerian psychotherapist. And while Eliza did not formally pass the Turing test in the sense that we all know it, and Stefan referenced earlier, users did suspend their disbelief. And they suspended their disbelief so readily that it troubled its creator, Joseph Weissenbaum, because he intended Eliza to be a mere caricature of human conversation. And yet, suddenly, users were confiding their most profound thoughts in Eliza. We must not forget that passing the Turing test and people believing digital characters or the chatbots we create are 2 completely different things. One is a test, and the other is a willing suspension of disbelief by our audiences. And in this talk, this will be one of the themes to cover today. We need to build digital characters responsibly, not in order for people to believe them, but because it is likely that they will. So in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, experiments continued to emerge. And interestingly, these all had quite quirky personalities. And they had character. Until the 2000s and arguably 2010s, when the emergence of the chatbot as an informational interface emerged, powered perhaps not surprisingly by the large tech companies. IBM's Watson made a brief foray into the entertainment world, appearing on Jeopardy, before disappearing back into a sea of data and joining Alexa, Cortana, Siri, and Google now as really information-focused entities. But in the 2000s, we saw another tide starting to rise, the metaverse. Here is a picture of some islands we built in Second Life for Accenture. In this proto-metaverse, we added a concierge character who you can see sitting behind the desk here on the screen, who welcomed visitors to the Accenture Islands. Now, surprisingly, what we found is that people started talking to it, and they wanted to engage. What they wanted to do was stop in the world and hang out, do things, talk to people. And I think one of the key lessons that we learned from the work we did building in Second Life was that if you walk into an empty space, you are likely to be in there for a few seconds, and I'll cover this a little bit later. But however, if there's something going on, something engaging, whether it's an event that you're hosting, maybe a little bit like today, or indeed inbuilt games in the metaverse, or more importantly, some form of digital human who you can immediately talk to and engage with, then that engagement level between the user, between the consumer and that location in the metaverse is going to increase substantially. So what we did is that we then thought, okay, this is interesting. What sort of character would be emotionally engaging that we could create? So what we did, I'll move on from here, was we then moved on to a chat bot which was text only, and we thought, as humans, who do we engage with most emotionally? So we created the perfect boyfriend and the perfect girlfriend. And those were text chat bots that sat on 2 magazine websites in Australia and were powered by a system called My Cyber Twin that some of you may know. It was then acquired by IBM and formed part of Watson. And what was astonishing about that was the level of engagement that we got. So the average session time for each of these, just text chatting, was about half an hour, 30 minutes. And some session times were running for 6 hours, astonishingly long engagement. Now, of course, as a lot of you know, we could see the results of these. We could see what people were saying. And that gives a real insight and gave us a real insight into how people wanted to engage with that. And there were 2 learnings that we took away from it. One, people just want to be listened to, feel that they're being listened to. And 2, they really are keen to have some form of direction in their chat. Now, number 1 was easy because much like Eliza and the concept of the psychotherapist, a lot of the dialogue that was being designed was created to generate a level of empathy between the user and Chloe, who was the name of the of the perfect girlfriend, and it slips my mind suddenly who the name of the boyfriend was. The core focus of the conversation was around listening and being empathetic, and I think that was a real driver. However, the bit that was missing was the second piece, which there was no direction of flow for the conversation. So what we wanted to do after that was to explore powerful characters as well as empathetic ones. And in this one, we swung the pendulum a little bit darker into a project called The Suspect. And we layered a level of story over this project. And the story was very simple. Here's a character who has handed himself into a police station. He's committed some crime, something unspeakable, and he will only talk to you. And very importantly in this project, we wanted to cast the audiences inside the story talking to this character. It was not that they were role-playing a detective inspector or had some sort of game character that they were adopting. It was very much you and your a battle of wits between you and this character. And at this point, there was an interesting piece of research that we did, which was, should we cast people in as themselves, or should we cast people in as a sort of role playing? And the answer we came out with was through a particular test we did at one moment, where in our office we had a big wall down one side of the office. And the other side of that wall, we sat the writer, who was role-playing the role of the suspect. And then we got one of our guys who, very much a game player, very much immersed in the space, very difficult to please, to role-play it. And to test the scenario, but not role play it as a detective, but to play as himself. And that particular chat session lasted from memory, 45 minutes. We thought, gosh, that's a significant amount of time that's spent engaging with this character. And then we printed out the dialogue from that particular conversation, and it was just 1.5 sides of paper. And what that showed us clearly was that this was an experience in which he was thinking about it. It was much slower than a quick, in-out question and answer session. He really felt immersed in the story. It really felt a connection with the experience that we were creating. So we then realized, though, that the addition of a story to this required a completely different interface. And it required an interface which was not to get people in and out of the conversation quickly, but was to keep people in the conversation for a long period of time. And that was the genesis of Charisma, whose interface you can see here. Marcus Winter was our suspect character. And you can see here his first line, "Thanks for coming." We can see the conversation not only just between one character, but very importantly, we want two characters in here. We want to be able to put you as a consumer, as a member of the audience, into an experience where there is tension already between two characters, or at least there's a relationship between them, because that way you will start to feel more immersed. And again, as you can see, this starts to become a lot more relevant as we head into metaverses. So in this, what you've just seen with this is not only that we can do multiple characters, but also there's an element of there's an emotion engine in here. So if you say something whose sentiment is negative, you will make Marcus feel a sense of anger. If you confide in him, there will be trust, there will be happiness, and that then influences the rest of the experience as we go through. Equally, as you saw there, we have the concept of subplots, as many people do, where if someone says something completely out of that branch, Charisma has an element of handling that on the side, which allows for that more natural piece. So if the player says, what's your favorite fruit, then we have that support there. And very importantly, both from a storytelling perspective and a graph perspective, the gameplay elements of memory and these gates that are brought in from our experience in designing video games, funny enough, allow that element of quiz, of challenge to be put into a conversation. So in the suspect, for example, he asks you who your favorite family member is. We check that, validate it as a name, and then remember it so that it forms part of that story and recall further down the track. And then, as you can see here, we adapt the concept of the gate so that it matches those moves. And importantly, what this does is take the experience out of that standard sort of question and answer, very quick in and out, that we see used for current call centers, into something that's a lot more emotionally engaging. And here is the playthrough, if you like, the results of making those changes that you saw in the graph, all in real time. And of course, vitally, the analytics to see on how well each branch is performing. So again, in real time, you're able to see, is the consumer going down the pathway that the writer intended? The other key point that I think is very important for all of us now is that the conversational design of chatbots needs to be put into the hands of empowered writers whose core skill set from working in, let's say, the TV, movie, or video games industries can design characters that we feel empathy with. And that for us was critical. So very early on, as we're designing the platform, we took it through 4 different writers' labs. And these were 2-day workshops where writers from the video games industry, from immersive theater, from TV, all came in to experiment, to learn about conversation design and how stories can be told in conversation design, but also to help influence what we could deliver as part of the technology. Now, of course, the TV, movie, and video games industries themselves are now at a pivotal nexus where the introduction of things like virtual production, which has been massively accelerated during the pandemic, and games engines, as we see in Decentraland, in metaverses like Fortnite, are enabling incredibly high quality visuals to come alive dynamically. This is a short preview of a project we did with Warner Brothers on the CGI model from the Justice League Steppenwolf. So again, taking this very much out of standard chatbot realm and running a character that was the CGI model from the silver screen, and making him sort of metaverse ready for characters so that you could enter his universe for better or for worse.
I am Steppenwolf. And you look scared. Are you scared, human?
You don't scare me, Steppenwolf.
Bravado in the face of threat. It is courageous, but with you it's fake. You already know who I am. I have broken 100,000 worlds in Darkseid's name, and soon I will break the Earth. But there is something in my way. I am looking for a suitable human to infiltrate our enemies from the inside.
Okay.
Okay. Is that all you can think of? Now, tell me. Does having a purpose appeal to you?
Do I want a purpose? Yeah, I guess so.
A human with actual ambition. You outclass most of your kind.
So let's leave Steppenwolf there. Important to notice, by the way, that demonstration is in the Unreal Engine, powered by Epic. We were fortunate enough to have their support from a mega grant to be able to connect, our Charisma chatbot system into Unreal Engine, and not only power the speech, but also power the animation that you saw there. And that for us was critical. So very early on, as we're designing the platform, we took it through 4 different writers' labs. And workshops where writers from the video games industry, from immersive theatre, from TV, all came to experiment, to learn. Now, of course, Second Life for Accenture. In this proto-metaverse, we added a concierge character who you can see sitting behind the desk here on the screen, who welcomed visitors to the Accenture Islands. Now, surprisingly, what we found is that people started talking to it, and they wanted to engage. What they wanted to do was stop in the world and hang out, do things, talk to people. And I think one of the key lessons that we learned from the work we did building in Second Life was that if you walk into an empty space, you are likely to be in there for a few seconds, and I'll cover this a little bit later. However, if there's something going on, something engaging, whether it's an event that you're hosting, maybe a little bit like today, or indeed inbuilt games in the metaverse, or more importantly, some form of digital human who you can immediately talk to and engage with, then that engagement level between the user, between the consumer and that location in the metaverse is going to increase substantially. So what we did is that we then thought, okay, this is interesting. What sort of character would be emotionally engaging that we could create? So what we did, I'll move on from here, was we then moved on to a chat bot which was text only, and we thought, as humans, who do we engage with most emotionally? So we created the perfect boyfriend and the perfect girlfriend. And those were text chat bots that sat on 2 magazine websites in Australia and were powered by a system called My Cyber Twin that some of you may know. It was then acquired by IBM and formed part of Watson. And what was astonishing about that was the level of engagement that we got. So the average session time for each of these, just text chatting, was about half an hour, 30 minutes. And some session times were running for 6 hours, astonishingly long engagement. Now, of course, as a lot of you know, we could see the results of these. We could see what people were saying. And that gives a real insight and gave us a real insight into how people wanted to engage with that. And there were 2 learnings that we took away from it. One, people just want to be listened to, feel that they're being listened to. And 2, they really are keen to have some form of direction in their chat. Now, number 1 was easy because it was much like Eliza and the concept of the psychotherapist. A lot of the dialogue that was being designed was created to generate a level of empathy between the user and Chloe, who was the name of the girlfriend of the perfect girlfriend, and it slips my mind suddenly who the name of the boyfriend was. The core focus of the conversation was around listening and being empathetic, and I think that was a real driver. However, the bit that was missing was the second piece, which there was no direction of flow for the conversation. So what we wanted to do after that was to explore powerful characters as well as empathetic ones. And in this one, we swung the pendulum a little bit darker into a project called The Suspect. And we layered a level of story over this project. And the story was very simple. Here's a character who has handed himself into a police station. He's committed some crime, something unspeakable, and he will only talk to you. And very importantly in this project, we wanted to cast the audiences inside the story talking to this character. It was not that they were role-playing a detective inspector or had some sort of game character that they were adopting. It was very much you and your a battle of wits between you and this character. And at this point, there was an interesting piece of research that we did, which was, should we cast the people in as themselves, or should we cast people in as a sort of role playing? And the answer we came out with was through a particular test we did at one moment, where in our office we had a big wall down one side of the office. And the other side of that wall, we sat the writer, who was role-playing the role of the suspect. And then we got one of our guys who very much a game player, very much immersed in the space, very difficult to please, to role play it. And to test the scenario, but not role play it as a detective, but to play as himself. And that particular chat session lasted from memory, 45 minutes. We thought, gosh, that's a significant amount of time that's spent engaging with this character. And then we printed out the dialogue from that particular conversation, and it was just 1.5 sides of paper. And what that showed us clearly was that this was an experience in which he was thinking about it. It was much slower than a quick, in-out question and answer session. He really felt immersed in the story. It really felt a connection with the experience that we were creating. So we then realized, though, that the addition of a story to this required a completely different interface. And it required an interface which was not to get people in and out of the conversation quickly, but was to keep people in the conversation for a long period of time. And that was the genesis of Charisma, whose interface you can see here. Marcus Winter was our suspect character. And you can see here his first line, "Thanks for coming." We can see the conversation not only just between one character, but very importantly, we want two characters in here. We want to be able to put you as a consumer, as a member of the audience, into an experience where there is tension already between two characters, or at least there's a relationship between them, because that way you will start to feel more immersed. And again, as you can see, this starts to become a lot more relevant as we head into metaverses. So in this, what you've just seen with this is not only that we can do multiple characters, but also there's an element of there's an emotion engine in here. So if you say something whose sentiment is negative, you will make Marcus feel a sense of anger. If you confide in him, there will be trust, there will be happiness, and that then influences the rest of the experience as we go through. Equally, as you saw there, we have the concept of subplots, as many people do, where if someone says something completely out of that branch, Charisma has an element of handling that on the side, which allows for that more natural piece. So if the player says, what's your favorite fruit, then we have that support there. And very importantly, both from a storytelling perspective and a graph perspective, the gameplay elements of memory and these gates that are brought in from our experience in designing video games, funny enough, allow that element of quiz, of challenge to be put into a conversation. So in the suspect, for example, he asks you who your favorite family member is. We check that, validate it as a name, and then remember it so that it forms part of that story and recall further down the track. And then, as you can see here, we adapt the concept of the gate so that it matches those moves. And importantly, what this does is take the experience out of that standard sort of question and answer, very quick in and out, that we see used for current call centers, into something that's a lot more emotionally engaging. And here is the playthrough, if you like, the results of making those changes that you saw in the graph, all in real time. And of course, vitally, the analytics to see on how well each branch is performing. So again, in real time, you're able to see, is the consumer going down the pathway that the writer intended? The other key point that I think is very important for all of us now is that the conversational design of chatbots needs to be put into the hands of empowered writers whose core skill set from working in, let's say, the TV, movie, or video games industries can design characters that we feel empathy with. And that for us was critical. So very early on, as we're designing the platform, we took it through 4 different writers' labs. And these were 2-day workshops where writers from the video games industry, from immersive theater, from TV, all came in to experiment, to learn about conversation design and how stories can be told in conversation design, but also to help influence what we could deliver as part of the technology. Now, of course, the TV, movie, and video games industries themselves are now at a pivotal nexus where the introduction of things like virtual production, which has been massively accelerated during the pandemic, and games engines, as we see in Decentraland, in metaverses like Fortnite, are enabling incredibly high quality visuals to come alive dynamically. This is a short preview of a project we did with Warner Brothers on the CGI model from the Justice League Steppenwolf. So again, taking this very much out of standard chatbot realm and running a character that was the CGI model from the silver screen, and making him sort of metaverse ready for characters so that you could enter his universe for better or for worse.
I am Steppenwolf. And you look scared. Are you scared, human?
You don't scare me, Steppenwolf.
Bravado in the face of threat. It is courageous, but with you it's fake. You already know who I am. I have broken 100,000 worlds in Darkseid's name, and soon I will break the Earth. But there is something in my way. I'm looking for a suitable human to infiltrate our enemies from the inside.
Okay.
Okay. Is that all you can think of? Now, tell me. Does having a purpose appeal to you?
Do I want a purpose? Yeah, I guess so.
A human with actual ambition. You outclass most of your kind.
So let's leave Steppenwolf there. Important to notice, by the way, that demonstration is in the Unreal Engine, powered by Epic. We were fortunate enough to have their support from a mega grant to be able to connect, our Charisma chatbot system into Unreal Engine, and not only power the speech, but also power the animation that you saw there.
The website is, anyone can access it. It's easy to go there. You often see people going there to get basic answers, kiosk style questions like how late are you open, or just things that people are kind of too lazy or too busy to go searching through an FAQ section of your website. So we see that as a good place to start, especially for high volume, easy to answer questions, but also for questions that require tasks, like where you have to, for instance, pass a JWT token. People may not know what that means, but authentication, things that typically require a person to go into your account, verify that you are who you say you are, and then handle some things. That can all be handled through the website, as well as chiming in on different pages of the website, saying like, oh, I see that you're looking at this page. Maybe I can help you with this. So it's kind of like if you have a front end layer, it can sort of watch what you're doing and what you're clicking on and respond proactively. So we really do love that channel. That's not to say that other channels aren't spectacular. And again, eventually people who are using that web channel want to train that agent over time so that they can then export that agent to other channels eventually.
Nice. Go on, Mudu, you were saying, what's your thoughts on, at the moment, best examples of channel and use case fit at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, very good question. So I think, look, for me, I think if I look at the employees for our organization, small, medium business to large, if it's for internal employees for any organization, they will be in 3 channels pretty much. It is Microsoft Teams, it is Zoom, it is Slack. right? They're not going to be in messaging. They won't be doing WhatsApp. It's internal to your organizations. Can think of like you're running a company, your company employees will be there. For customer service, what I've been seeing there for customer intel, like sales, marketing, you want an intel about a user coming to your site. Those tend to be much more on the website or mobile site, mobile applications, right? They tend to be there. Social media will be used, but it's a lesser signal there. Because if somebody is coming to your site, is asking a question, he wants to buy certain things, he wants to understand more product, they tend to be a lot more on the web page, mobile or desktop page with mobile apps. Some companies have provided mobile app like the banking. So banking will use literally all the mobile apps, right? Then if you take this to the other extreme that you're talking about, which is people who are in the social media side, which is people posting on Twitter, Facebook, WeChat, they tend to use it much more for social media signals. All right, that's more for very top of the funnel. People are looking for information, finding information, etc. So depending on the problem that you're doing, you can engage users in all three channels.
Interesting. Birud, what are your thoughts on that kind of? Because I imagine that the markets that you're serving, I would imagine that some of the use cases might get deeper into the funnel. Do they transactional based services and stuff like that? I wonder if you could shed some light on the kind of use cases that you're seeing across those messaging channels that you specialize in.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a night and day difference, right? I think, look, in the US, we've had a little bit of this hype cycle, people say, right? When Facebook Messenger launched their APIs in 2016, we were their launch partners. We were literally the first bot platform. So we've seen all of this, and the promise was there, but the adoption never happened anywhere near that scale because people don't use Facebook Messenger as frequently. And of course, Slack is used heavily in businesses, but then again, it's a limited number of users and so on. And this whole vision, in-app sort of also defeats the purpose because the whole point of a chatbot is not to have to download the app in the first place. In web chat as well, it's really that web chat is a sideshow while the real business happens on the main website, right? So I'm not undermining any of this. I'm just saying that for a variety of reasons, the chatbot technology has been way ahead of consumer adoption of it, at least in the US markets. But then when you go to emerging markets where people are spending all their time, right, on WhatsApp, on Telegram, on SMS, right? So much so that now e-commerce is happening. You can actually do shopping and checkout and catalog and payments and transactions right inside the messaging experience, right? I mean, so what would typically happen on the website in the US or would happen inside mobile apps, the core part of the digital transaction is now happening in messaging experiences, right? So we are seeing things like, marketing and deals and offers and, commerce and shopping and catalog transactions and so on. I can give you a ton of mainstream use cases, right? You have a real estate company which lets you list apartments by taking a picture on WhatsApp, which is a lot easier than uploading through a website. You have an education company where you can take a photo of the calculus problem and will instantly send you a response. There is conversational banking where you can literally do the whole end-to-end banking experience, sort of like a Neo app, again, through these messaging experiences. Commerce, deals, promotions, offers, airline booking, upgrading flights, rescheduling package delivery, you name it, right? I'm talking about the core of what happens by hundreds of millions of users, right? The core digital business and transactions are happening in a different geography, in a different medium. And I think that is where, really, it's not a hype cycle. It's not a sideshow. It is the primary digital backbone where really commerce and everything is happening. So we're seeing a lot of traction of the kind that I would have expected to see in the US back in 2016. Never happened, still not realized its full potential in the way that it becomes the new website. It's almost like in the emerging markets, your chatbot is very likely for a business is very likely their only digital presence, not an incremental channel in addition to the website and their app and other things. It is perhaps the only channel, almost like in China, where WeChat, in many cases, for most offline businesses, is really their only digital presence, right? So that, to me, is the real significance of how big this is, how big this can be. And it really, in a way, I think, in a way, the US is a developed market, so there's so many other things already that this is just sort of incremental. I think in emerging markets, it's really the main thing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. That, I mean, you look at companies like maybe Capital One, who is like a real standout example of an organization that's really kind of like AI first, and almost to the point where, not quite, but they're on the verge of having their initial touch point being AI mediated across most channels. And so they're kind of shaping themselves up, which is the way I think that most enterprises will end up in however long it'll take. But the first touch point across most channels, given that most channels are conversational, will be an AI. And it sounds as though in some of those emerging markets, given that the channels are perhaps fewer, organizations are getting there a little bit quicker. I'm wondering whether, because one of the questions here from Prashanth is around some of the differences perhaps in the adoption of these solutions in the West versus in East. And I think that, Birud, I think you shined a really good light there from the emerging market perspective. I'm wondering if we can get Rob and Mudu's take on the adoption of this stuff in the West as it compares to the East. Maybe Mudu will start with you and then hand over to Rob.
No, I think absolutely. Look, I think adoption is happening everywhere, right? So at least for us, we started the company. We are based in US. So my initial customers are in US. Then we have now customers in Europe and Asia. So I think the choice is the world is flat, right? So there's no limit to it. I think the use cases in Asia tend to be a lot more different. It'll be more commerce related, e-commerce related, more on retail, right? Whereas in US, it's tend to be a lot more B2B, B2C for businesses. Not that there is no AI chatbots or chatbots for commerce, there is there, but there's a lot more value for the higher order items like customers who want to do database issues, or customers who are interested in cloud services, customers who want to do about cybersecurity. The area that we have not discussed, Ken, is cybersecurity. Take an example. If somebody attacks you, you have a phishing attack going on, you have ransomware. Are you going to wait until somebody attacks your network and take all the steal and open up a request to your IT admin? That's too late. All the things have already gone to the other side of the world. So I think you'll see, even in the cybersecurity, I call it the consumerization of security, where the user will instantly get on a chat channel, talk to a cybersecurity, try to protect his phishing attack or ransomware attack. That hasn't happened yet. So you will see the adoption of conversational AI in cybersecurity world in big way. Because and from a consumer side, not just from a business side, right? You're sitting at home, you're getting an attack. So I think with increasingly the world being so much security threat, cybersecurity will be a next big battleground for conversational AI. But look, all the use cases that people discuss here all make sense. But I think each country, each region will have different use cases. US and North America tend to be a lot more B2B, B2C use cases. Europe kind of aligns with that. Asia tend to be a lot more commerce, retail in those spaces.
Does that concur with your observations, Rob? Maybe he's building on to both of those questions. One is generally the adoption of this kind of technology, and then two, any kind of industries in particular that you think are adopting this more heavily than others.
I think that in the US, for instance, typically what consumers will do if they want to rent an apartment or buy a home or sell a home is they'll visit a website. So we have a client, Realogy. They get millions and millions of people coming to, like, say, the Century 21 website every month, possibly even like 1 million a day or something, huge amount of volume. And they discover they're not doing it through like a WeChat, like you see in Asia, or through WhatsApp. They're going to the website. And right away, a bot will pop up and say, hey, I can make this faster for you. I can match you with the right broker in your area. And they'll say, okay, and they'll click on the bot. And so that adoption seems to be working well. But to me, it's what we're seeing at Bot Copy is it's not website versus mobile apps or mobile channels. Sometimes we have a bot in Canvas, for instance, which is an education environment in a classroom, or we'll have a bot that's living within like a Riot Games account. For instance, Riot Games would have users who were, their account was frozen and they had to figure out why, and then a chatbot would pop up within that system and help them. More than where the channel is, if the bot pops up and kind of sets the expectation and works well, then users will interact with it, as opposed to, close it out and say, this sucks, I'm going to call a person. So to me, the adoption really relies on how good the execution is. And that brings us back to the backend functionality and that deep kind of cloud NLU intelligence to make sure that people can use NLU, type in their natural language, and have a fluid communication with their computer, because that's really the main barrier.
Mm. Sounds very much like you're kind of leaning on that concept of setting defaults. You know, you have the chatbot pop up immediately. It kind of positions itself as this is just the way that you interact with this website kind of thing, which is always been the challenge of, like, you know, standalone voice assistant platforms like Alexa and Google Assistant, for example. It's always an effort for a brand to get traffic onto that. You almost have to take traffic from one place and shift it somewhere else, whereas you may as well just serve them wherever they are. Sounds as though, Biru, you're suggesting that the adoption is naturally there, and so these AI assistants in the messaging channel in those emerging markets is again a default. A little bit like if you call a call center. If you call a call center and you end up speaking to a bot, you'll just speak to them because it's just a default way of adopting it, which I think is a really sensible way of getting this stuff adopted more widely. Thank you, Mudu and Biru, there for responding to some of the questions that we have coming through in the chat. By all means, if you do have questions, continue to put them in here. I'm always curious. You all have specialisms in either certain channels or certain industries. I'm always curious about industries that are not utilizing, excuse me, this technology as much as they could be, and where you think the opportunities are for, you know, I mean, we could go through industries. We've mentioned already retail. You know, there's questions and comments in here about healthcare, the typical adoption. You know, Mudu, you've mentioned internal use cases, those horizontal use cases around like IT support, HR, stuff like that. You've got industries like banking. We mentioned Capital One, you know, insurance, financial services, government services, debt collection, all these service-based kind of industries are kind of adopting this stuff. I would say perhaps more than others, and you could put retail in there as well. Is there any industries in particular that you think are really just there's a real ripe opportunity, and for some reason or other it's just not quite happening? Biru, we'll start with you, maybe from your perspective. Any industries or use cases that you think are just ripe for this stuff that haven't quite manifested themselves as quickly as you might have thought?
Well, you know, I think that's, I feel or I felt for 5 or 6 years now, right, since 2016, when this was supposed to take off a lot, that in the US businesses didn't take it off as much as they should, and they're starting to right now, and I'm excited about it. I think you know, not to belabor the point, but I think in the markets that we operate, we are seeing it's a cross section of businesses, right? There are small businesses, large, across retail and commerce, across banking, across education and healthcare, and travel and hospitality and so on, right? And many mainstream cases. You know, I think the big picture, this is a big picture panel, right? So the one big picture idea, if I can throw out, really is that, you know, at least in these markets that we focus on, chatbots and conversational experiences are really like the new website, right? Think of the messaging app as the new browser. Think of the bot or the conversational experience as the new website. And when you put it in that context, right, by analogy, in the mid 90s, when that happened, businesses realized that this is the digital storefront. This is where customers are coming in from. This is where you got to have a presence. And with hindsight, you know, there are millions and billions of websites, and there are tools like WordPress and Shopify for building these websites. In almost exactly the same way now in these other markets, right? Because the web didn't happen quite as much, and even the app usage is sort of less so. But these conversational experiences are really becoming the primary digital storefront where every industry, every business is going to have to build this. And that is massive, right? A decade from now, we'll look back and find millions, maybe more of you know, conversational experiences. Virtually every business will have to do it, and they'll have to do it to support every kind of use case, right? So it's really just an order of magnitude, right? It's not to say that it's not going to, of course, it's a giant market. Of course, the Western markets will take to it. It's just that in many ways, right, because other technology is so much more evolved in the West, I think this remains sort of an incremental additional thing versus the main thing in these other markets, which, you know, they didn't have the earlier platforms developed as much. So they're leapfrogging now to this new technology. So it's really exciting. I think you're going to see where, you know, billions of people, millions of conversational experiences. I mean, that scale is really super exciting for us. Yeah.
Definitely. I do believe that every company in time, the default touch point will be AI mediated, without a doubt. Given that we've only got a minute left, maybe we'll kind of build on that question, and we'll go to Rob and then finally to Mudu for the last word on those kind of, like, you know, we've heard from Birud there around this stuff is just going to going to keep growing, and every organization is going to be developing this stuff for a whole bunch of different use cases, and it's just going to be proliferating either faster than we think or slower than we think. Rob, what do you think the future holds for this kind of technology? What are some of the trends that you're seeing, and where's it heading?
Oh, well, I agree with Birut. It's going to explode, continually, because the ability to communicate with computer technology and with companies in a fluid way with no friction is going to help you succeed. It's going to bring your costs down. At the end of the day, we're talking about automation. A lot of companies don't feel like saying that because nobody wants to be seen as, hey, we're replacing people with robots. But even the companies that said that 2-3 years ago, guess what? Now they're diving in full on with chatbots and automating things. And that's not to say that they're there to replace humans. Of course, we're trying to free up humans to do more human-related things. But if your competitors are automating these things that can be automated and you're not, you can't survive. So this is a race to the top in terms of having the best technologies to do it in the best way, in the most ways. So I would want to say one very quick thing. We were talking to a top university in the US, and they were sort of hemming and hawing and saying, look, universities operate at the speed of government. And so even though we love what you guys are offering and we love the promise of it, it's going to take a while. And that's one of the big barriers, is that there's just some bureaucracy stopping progress. And then governments, same thing. We'd love to see more schools and more governments adopting this technology faster, because that impacts students, that impacts citizens who are paying taxes, and that has a real effect on well-being in the world. And those are the slowest adopters, although we do have some really fantastic superstars in those categories as well.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for an amazing panel. I'm sure we have more questions in the chats, and you guys can interact with the attendees, answer some of their questions. Next up, we have the Google team coming, Tina and Beck. If you are, there you are. Hi, Rebecca, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to see you.
Oh, likewise. Awesome. So it's a very exciting talk because I really like what Google's doing. And last time we had Rob Lawson talk about it, and the timing of it was perfect because in some sense he was talking about like chatbots and what Google's doing with maps and so on. And then I was sharing my vision of like, well, one day you're going to be on a SERP, and you're going to be able to talk to about right from a Google results page. So that's the part I'm curious about. And well, let's see what happens. So without further ado, I'll drop off and you guys can take it away.
Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. And without being too much of a spoiler, I think we've got some good news for you.
Okay.
Well, first, hello, everybody. Thank you for having us today, Stefan. It's a real pleasure to be here. Let me know if the sound quality is all right. But we're really excited to be speaking today to talk more about how we can leverage the power of conversation with Google Business Messages. So first, I want to greet everybody. I imagine attendees are joining us from all across the globe. So good morning to some, like myself in San Francisco. Good afternoon to many, and good evening to some of you as well. Today, we would like to speak more about our Business Messages platform. And with that, I'll introduce myself as Tina Prestino. I'm part of Google's partnerships team under business communications. And with that, we're really trying to help make conversational delightful and build more meaningful connections across brands and consumers through conversation. I also want to hand it over to Beck so that she might be able to introduce herself. And I know we have a couple of slides with our lovely pictures as we move ahead in the presentation as well.
Certainly do. Hello, everyone. Very good to be here. So my name is Beck Bright. I work very closely with the Google team on a consultancy basis, specifically working with sort of brands and partners on the conversation experiences, and really how the power of creativity can help brands take that experience to the next level, and really the difference that sort of an emotionally compelling experience may have on business effectiveness.
So as Stefan mentioned, my teammate Rob was here in the past, and we're thrilled to be here today. And our goal for the session together will be to talk about the what and why of business messages. What are the formats that exist today, and how are we hoping to expand upon them as the year progresses? Then I will translate some of these examples into a fun capability story as I walk through my commute on a typical day in San Francisco. And then we'll close it off by talking through automation and some of the best practices, some of the principles that we utilize when thinking about how to take advantage of an automated system to help users through their journey and hopefully also drive value for brands. So as we talk about messaging at a broad level, I think it's become very relevant that we now know messaging is the preferred method of communication. Not only is it appropriate for us to connect with friends and family members, but consumers are also reporting that they're more likely, 77% more likely to purchase when they can message directly with the brand. And they're 85% more likely to interact with companies that can be personalized in their messaging. Certainly, conversational commerce is a way to make this a reality. And it's wonderful to see how conversational commerce and these trends are really going to continue growing. And we're estimating, or Juniper Research estimates, that by 2025, the market will actually grow to $27 billion. Knowing that this is a demand and it's something that consumers and brands alike are really interested in, I'm very pleased to share that Google has now launched our free platform called Business Messages. Through this platform, we're able to create really delightful experiences in a personalized way that connects users with brands from surfaces that you know and love, from Google organic search results, as you can see here on the left, as well as Google Maps. And brands can also place our business messages entry point on any of your own first-party surfaces, whether it be web, a mobile app, or even an email marketing message. Through the connection point, the users on mobile will be taken from this chat entry point on the left into a message experience. And there we'll be able to offer a lot of rich feature sets, welcome messages, recommendation chips, as well as beautiful carousels of products. This messaging feature is also asynchronous. So if an individual wants to come back to this message, they will retain the history of that chat and can pick right back up where they left. So when we think about how this works, ultimately, customers are given entry points across a variety of methods, and then through messaging infrastructure and platforms, we're able to connect them directly to an automated agent or even to live agents in the event a request is a bit more complex and needs more assistance from a human. Certainly, Business Messages is already integrated with Dialogflow, both CS and ES, of course, part of our Google Cloud platform. But we have hundreds of partners that are bringing their own expertise and technology to integrate with Business Message and to help elevate and bring brands directly to those consumers at the moment that matters most. So here, I want to highlight and help you visualize what are some of the entry points that exist today. And Stefan had called out, we do now offer business messages directly from Google organic search results. When someone searches for a branded term, also something related to customer service, you'll see the opportunity to chat with a live agent. From local listings or from within Google Maps, we also surface this chat option. And then for Android phone customers that have the phone app installed, if they're about to call a business and that business has business messages turned on, we'll give them an option. Really, we want users to be the ones driving what path suits their needs. And if you have chat and voice available, certainly we hope that through offering this at this moment, we might help divert calls that maybe didn't need to happen and ultimately give users what they need at the moment they need it. And then to the far right, this is a fictitious example, but we do also offer the ability to connect a webhook directly on your site, again, within a mobile app, or even in any sort of email marketing materials so that you can connect with users and give them the choice of how they want to reach out. Now, the next slide is showcasing something that we're working on. So we do have a beta product in place called Click to Message Ads. And ultimately, it's surfacing the ability to chat with a brand based on the keywords that that brand identifies. Search has been extremely valuable for users and businesses alike. And now through the ability to surface chat, we're hoping to help create sort of a frictionless experience and also help elevate a brand in the consideration set when someone is looking for a particular item or they have questions. If we can help surface you and place you there at the moment of need, hopefully we'll also help create a stronger relationship between you and that brand, place you in the consideration set, and hopefully help create a really fantastic experience end to end. In the similar vein, we have also just started a beta test offering this entry point to business messages directly from our shopping property. So this is, I think, a really valuable opportunity because when users have found a specific item they're interested in, there's a very strong intent behind that. And some items like this refrigerator here, it's something that needs a bit more sort of information before a user feels confident making such a brand purchase. By bringing that user directly to chat, we're hopeful that brands are finding the ability to answer questions at that moment of need and complete the purchase journey all within a chat experience in a way that creates value for both parties and ultimately brings us together through this conversational mechanism. So those two, keep under your hat. We hope to have more news for them later this year, but I felt really excited to be able to share that with everyone joining us today. So since I've talked a lot about what's happening, I'd love to take you on a bit of a journey together where we are going to do, you'll join me on a commute from my home into our San Francisco Google office. I take the BART train. So as the slides progress, you'll feel like you're joining me. And as I hop on BART, I realize I can use this time to help address a couple errands that need to get done. As a busy parent who also is a working mom, I know I have to buy groceries for dinner tonight. So I search my local market to find out what times are they open and discover they do offer chat. So I choose to start a chat. And not only can I look for specific ingredients, they have this great idea, recipe inspiration, where they take me through some questions about what are our dietary needs, how many people am I trying to feed? And I find that there's actually some really great ideas, things that seem pretty simple for a weeknight. And also by clicking through, they automatically place those specific items I need for these recipes directly in my cart. So I place them in the cart, complete my order, and now food will be ready when I get home. Some brands that are live today with similar experiences include Albertsons. They started business messages in part because with COVID, there was a lot of uncertainty. They were getting lots of phone calls and they needed to address needs of customers while keeping the people in store focused on the individuals in present. So this evolved and now has become a really exciting ordering experience that allows brands, customers to find what they need in a way that is reducing the requirements of all the humans in the store while still getting answers to individuals who need to find things. Walmart is another great example of a brand who's been working with us now for a few years, and they are utilizing our platform to centralize information and again, reduce call volume to stores, help add value to customers who are looking for specific inventory items, and hopefully continue the flow of getting users or customers in and out in a way that's frictionless and hopefully more delightful than it would have been prior to the chat. Okay, now that I have dinner covered, I'm thinking about the weekend and how I would really love to be able to get up to the mountains more often with my kids, but I'm very eco-conscious and I'm thinking with the gas prices as they are, maybe I should consider a hybrid. So I look up on my phone a local dealership and identify that, hey, locally, there's this dealership that has a chat experience. I start doing some questions and searches and find they have this very fun gamified experience where I can learn about not only hybrid cars, but also in terms of electric cars, what type of charging stations are near me, what is that lifetime value of savings? And I realized that maybe electric is something we could consider. Through this chat, I'm also given the option to already move forward and book a test drive. So I go ahead and book it for the weekend. And I think this experience is something that we see a lot today in the States. We have thousands, or even beyond the US, most certainly, we have thousands of dealerships live on business messages. And we also have OEMs, including GM and Ford, who are using this experience to help connect not only to customers that are already owners of their cars and addressing their customer service needs, but also Ford has had a lot of success in helping reduce the time to purchase by, again, surfacing values of different cars, highlighting what cars might be in stock, and again, reducing that time to purchase through that purchase journey. And we're excited to see what more we can do in partnership with not only these brands, but also some of the tech partners who are developing really wonderful integrations for booking not only services and sales, but also for those who need their cars to be serviced. So when thinking about a car, I think maybe I should consider financing and how we might go about paying for such a new wonderful vehicle. And I search for my bank. Luckily, they offer a chat experience, and I start a little chat asking questions about how I might go about saving for such a big purchase. I answer some questions that help me identify what might address my needs based on the timeline and the amount I need. And ultimately, they then give me an option to make an app, fill out the application directly there within chat or connect me to a live agent. Again, there are instances where issues are a bit more complex. So I think having both an automated system and a live agent can really address a full host of needs for any given user. And I'm pleased to share that Geico is a brand in the financial services sector who's using business messages today. They help address issues for, again, existing customers who might have a need or a question, but also they're using it to help gain new customers at that moment where they're looking for new service and a new plan, and can be there to help any given user find what they need in a way that's effective, efficient, and hopefully a little bit more delightful. I'm almost to the office now, and I realized that I forgot it was Beck's birthday. So I searched my local florist that I know does great work, and I discover they have a wonderful process available in chat that allows me to identify that the occasion is a birthday. They let me decide what price point I'm looking for. And then they highlight to me that not only can they deliver flowers today, they can also allow me to subscribe to a flower service so that this will be a gift that keeps on giving. 1-800-Flowers is a brand also using this type of service with us today. And I have had actually a couple of colleagues mention how they've used it and have had great success with the asynchronous messaging. It also could be something where in the future, if 1-800-Flowers wants to reach out and remind somebody, hey, Mother's Day is coming up in May, do you need any flowers? This could be a really great opportunity to re-engage and find value for both the brand and the user. So in summary, I want to mention that there's quite a few advantages of utilizing conversational commerce, and certainly in surfacing that with Google because of the breadth and depth of users that we have across the globe. So first and foremost, time is reduced spent in that research and seeking phase. We're also able to highlight new brands that maybe a customer wasn't aware of, but with specific needs and requests, we can highlight them and again, hopefully lead to meaningful resolutions, all within a chat experience. We enable authentication, people can log in, and we can also help move people down that funnel in a way that's far more efficient with an experience that hopefully becomes more and more personalized over time and certainly more delightful. When users feel like a brand cares for them, it certainly allows them to feel more invested and more loyal with brands. And I think we're really only at the beginning of this journey together. There's a lot more we can do. And as mentioned in the last session, I know in the US, we're limited in some ways with the exposure that we're seeing, but when you look outside into emerging markets, I think we all know there's a lot of opportunity ahead. And with that, I'd love to hand it off to Beck so that she can talk a bit more about the automation piece.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Tina. I've seen that there's a couple of questions in chat as well, so thank you so much for that engagement. We've got some time at the end, a good kind of 10 minutes or so for questions, so I might come back to you then if that's all right. For now, what I would say with all of those examples that Tina kind of took us through, they all had one thing in common, which is that they're all able to be done start to finish really through automation. And I know that kind of we're speaking to the converted here today, so we won't spend too much on this, but of course, with Google, this is a space that we're incredibly excited about and kind of really interested in testing pushing the boundaries on. Automation for us is almost like the ultimate brand ambassador at scale. It's cost efficient, it's reliable, it's consistent, but really important, it can kind of ever evolve according to how real people are interacting with your conversation experiences. So keeping it very, very brief, really, it's all about taking the strengths of a live team, so namely the ability to deliver really exact information and queries in a bespoke and personalized way, really furnishing people with the specific information that they need and qualifying them for the next part of their journey. But really taking that to the next level through the power of AI. So it's incredibly cost efficient, as you guys will well know, allowing sort of multiple one-to-one conversations to happen simultaneously at any time of the day outside of working hours, which in and of itself, reduces costs. It frees up valuable human time and bandwidth. It avoids barriers. It avoids those drop-off points that happen when you're moving people from one digital experience to another, because you're able to take somebody from discovery right through to conversion, really within the same one experience. As Tina touched on briefly, you're able to reignite conversations. So pre or post sales, conversations that have lapsed for whatever reason, really informed by how people have previously interacted. And I'll touch a bit more on that slightly later as well. And finally, of course, what this represents, you could have kind of the ultimate dream team here between a live agent and an automated experience, being able to sort of qualify leads before really bringing the human specialized specialists in to kind of close the journey off for those more complicated pieces. I'm aware that there's some of you who are going to be sort of getting your hands dirty as well over the couple of days. So we wanted to kind of say, when it comes to winning automations, there's two main things. Now, this is a bit of a cheat because under the banner of our two main things, we have very craftily done 3 sub-points, but I think you'll kind of get what we're trying to say. So when it comes to making connections that count, the first point that we wanted to make here is really all about being there when and how the consumers, the prospective consumers need you, both today and tomorrow. So Google, as will come as a surprise to nobody, always starts with the user, and really nowhere is this more true or more natural to be true than in conversation. So first things first, it's all about planning your activity, knowing the fundamental user needs that conversation is meeting, really what even the tension point is that you're solving for, and working out the ecosystem from there. Then once they have tapped through, once they've clicked to chat, the first message they see is critical. We like to think of it as kind of the make or break moment, really. It needs to reassure them that they were right to tap through and that their curiosity will be rewarded. It needs to manage expectations of exactly what they can be using that conversation for. Again, making sure that any possible barriers to them seeking what they've set out to get are removed. And of course, as few words as possible. So again, the person has to do as minimal work as possible to continue that engagement. Slightly flippantly, but very true, emojis really are our friend in this scenario. So to give you kind of a very short, simple example here, and a very dry example, but just more to illustrate the point, an introduction that really simply introduces an automated experience or welcomes somebody into the experience could be simple as hi, I'm EcoCars, to use one of the brand examples, virtual assistant. Setting expectations of what it's able to do and outlining the experience can be something like, I can check your order, I can find products, I can even tell you jokes. So somebody knows from the off, what they're able to do within that world. And then offering a really, really simple path forward. So something like, where do you want to start? Just tap one of the options below. It's pretty straightforward. And again, I know that we're talking to people who are well versed in this world already, but kind of doing the brilliant basics well makes all the difference. Lastly, as we've mentioned with Google Business Messages, if somebody has engaged, a brand can reach back out within the 30-day window. Now, this could have huge potential to continue the usefulness of the conversation to the user. Obviously, when done well, when done thoughtfully, when done respectfully, and of course, avoiding anything that vaguely feels like spam, because that's not going to do anything for your brand loyalty. If somebody has dropped off pre-sale, for example, you could show them relevant offers, you can draw attention to a different area of the product portfolio, and post-sales, you can check in with their progress, you can cross-sell, you can serve them relevant content, you can get them in for services and maintenance, for example, if we think about auto as one example vertical. Lots of opportunities here to keep brands top of mind. And then the second piece here, I told you that it was slightly tenuous, our bucketing into two, but stick with me. When it comes to kind of making a connection that really counts, the second part of this is really remembering fundamentally what makes a good conversation in real life. For us, it's kind of when purpose meets delight, and delight is a word that Tina used a couple of times, and I think it's almost critical to a great conversational experience, and that should play through in the way that conversations are structured and designed. So to kind of unpack this a little bit more, questions and kind of active listening and topics should be used to quickly narrow down what's most relevant for that particular person, most relevant options, most relevant product suggestions. And we found that in most categories, of course, this changes according to complexity, but more often than not, this can be done at around 3 qualifying levels. The second part here is, that people need to know who they're talking with. They need to know that they're talking with either a bot or a human. And if they are talking with a bot, that's not to say that it needs to feel robotic. In fact, we try and avoid using sometimes chatbot as a term, because I think that people less versed in the space have some preconceptions around it. We talk more in kind of the vein of conversational assistants, because it should be the ultimate brand ambassador. You should be able to be playful with that brand tone of voice. The more compelling, the more engaging experience, the less functional it is, the more chance you have to avoid that drop off, the more chance you have of holding the attention of that audience. Lastly, and I actually think this is a really critical piece that can be much overlooked to the detriment of the effectiveness of the activity. It's really easy to overlook that this is a one-to-one interaction between customer and brand. So fundamentally, this is still a piece of brand communications and should be planned through that lens. So do loop in marketing, do absolutely, as I say, employ the brand tone of voice, do allow yourselves to get really creative with that experience. Is it a car model finder or is it a matchmaker? It could be really interesting. Do illustrate the story with visuals and emojis that help people navigate, in a quick and playful and delightful way. In short, just as we've seen with more traditional media, that the more traditional media provokes an emotional reaction, the more effective they are, especially when it looks to brand effects over time, so should conversation design be approached. So if we look at a very, very simple, and I think this is where we'll break after this bit for today for questions. If we look at a simple example here. So this is from a piece of work that Lowe's did in the States. And there's just a couple of things that we wanted to pull out from it because it's a really lovely real world example. So Lowe's deployed a refrigerator experience. Fridges, of course, are very high consideration, high cost items. So really interesting to see the role that conversation can play in that interaction. So what we love about this, really simple, the brand logo is used as the avatar. So what that means is that from the off there, when somebody has clicked to chat in what fundamentally still feels like quite a fresh and new experience with all the entry points that Tina outlined, you're immediately landing that credibility, you're landing that brand salience. And then with their welcome message, they've said, welcome to Lowe's, we can help you find the perfect refrigerator for your kitchen. Chat with one of our appliance experts by clicking the button below. They'll be with you in no time and help you find a cool match based on your needs. Ready? And then there are some options below. So super simple. It's reiterating the original intent that that customer showed that led them to click to chat. So it's immediately reassuring them that they're in the right place. It's being very clear about what that specific experience can offer them. And the language that's used is really simple, really accessible. They have used emojis and they've used them sparingly, but all in all, what they've done here is just craft something that feels like a really playful, delightful interaction that is easy for somebody to jump off from and to engage with. So it's just really, really neat and pretty simple. And I think what we'd love to do is pause there and open up to any thoughts, questions, provocations, Bills, anything of that ilk.
Yes, and I think it's worth noting, some folks have added questions to the Q&A section, so I'm happy. It looks like some things have been answered, but so a couple of things. I believe this is recorded. but I don't own it. So I will defer to Stefan on that question.
Yes,
but
it's recorded.
Great.
And you know
Thank
what the
you.
best part is? After the conference, anyone could go and watch the recordings right on Zoom events. So you're already logged in and it'll be recorded automatically and you can come back and watch it over and over again. But go ahead.
Amazing. And then can Google Business Messages connect with an existing chatbot backend? Yes, we would love to connect with any bot that is existing. We do have a developer site directly from our website that's listed here, businessmessages.google. You can go there to then create a connection point and integrate with our API. So we are thrilled to welcome any and all developers to help build new and exciting messaging platforms to connect with Google customers, to brands. And certainly, I'm not the most technical expert at Google, but I can help connect folks if they are interested in finding more resources. And then there's a question here about a use case for small businesses. And interestingly, we actually have quite a few small businesses using business messages, but through our previously called Google My Business entry point that was related to when small businesses have a physical location, they can create a post for Google that allows them to identify themselves as the owner of this company. And there you can also chat directly with customers. If you have a more complex, larger business, then having a brand or a technical partner to help develop a much more inclusive, sort of automated system is something that might be required. But we're finding that even small businesses are having a lot of success with chat. I will acknowledge, though, many of them are just directly getting sent these messages, and they are directly as a human responding to them versus having an automated system in place. Though I will acknowledge, with the help of Dialogflow, we have created sort of an FAQ bot that can help connect users to more automation. That is something that's a bit more involved than just the Google My Business. Now I believe that tool is called Google Profiles. That might be correct or not. But these are things that are available. And certainly if you have questions about this, we have an alias, BM, standing for Business Messages -inquiry at Google. And we'd love to make sure, even if our time here ends a bit early, we'd love to continue this conversation directly and help get you closer to hopefully activating on Business Message. And I think there's some questions.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, guys. And you can go ahead and answer the questions because we're going to go into a coffee break anyway. So
perfect. Okay. Well, I think here, this one might be more relevant for you, Beck. How do you balance the use of emoji with needs for users who are using screen readers?
Well, I've seen that there's a couple of questions that all kind of fit in a similar bucket. So the first thing, I know that I kind of trippingly talked about emoji as a way of landing tonality. Really what that comes down to is just being very true to the brand's tone of voice. So like I mentioned, that this is a piece of brand communications. One thing that you'll hear talked about in more traditional marketing is ensuring that the brand isn't sort of schizophrenic. So ensuring that there's consistency in the way that the brand talks and acts and behaves, no matter what touch point the customer is meeting the brand. And that's absolutely the same as in conversation. So one really interesting part of this is how brand guidelines are being developed, because more and more, when you're seeing brand houses and tone of voice documents being pulled together, a piece of that is absolutely extrapolating that into what that brand tone of voice is for a conversation assistant, because naturally you have to work a little bit harder to land the conversationality in a way that is right for that brand. You're perfectly right. I saw a question around from Alex. You're perfectly right that might change. Well, of course, it will change according to the type of brand and the type of sector. So, for example, with healthcare, you're probably looking for something slightly more expert and specialist, where certain emojis won't be appropriate. Whereas for retail brands, they might more be. So more than ever, the headline there is really do what is right and true for the brand across its mediums. Screen readers, leave that with me and let me come back on that piece. That's a really interesting one.
And someone asked here, is it available in the UK? Andre, yes, it is. We are a global team and this is a global platform. So we are available across the globe where Google operates, and excited to be there. And then I think I saw another question about a problem in the enterprise organization is gathering content from disparate systems where chatbots might handle. And to be honest, it is a challenge. I will not, it is. I think a lot of teams are siloed and customer service lives in one place. And that's where we actually got our start, where we had a lot of brands activating business messages specifically for customer service. I think we're now seeing that the opportunity to take this experience and also turn it into a sales vehicle is very exciting. I think in retail, we've seen a lot of great developments take place over time, but it is sometimes a little bit slow moving with the larger brands because you do need to start to connect the dots behind the scenes to get customer service reps trained up and learn how to address or upsell, or how do we connect the systems? Because it is possible. In the case of auto, I know it exists where OEMs represent brands. They are thinking about awareness and consideration and helping move customers through the journey to purchase. In the back end, we can transition an OEM type high level, high funnel question conversation and do a handover to a dealership. If we can identify where is this person located, how can we get them connected to the right dealer to then take over that conversation and help identify what vehicles are on the lot, what are the promos available, what kind of financing options do we have. So while I say this is a challenge, I think there's a great opportunity available to us if we can be strategic and think broadly about what are our needs today, sort of start crawling. What are our needs of tomorrow? We start walking and then connect the dots behind the scenes to then hopefully in the future start running and see what's really plausible when we bring together all of these different skill sets across these different silos of our companies to really develop an experience that is going to delight our users and hopefully continue to also grow revenue at the same time. So I know we've gone over, and again, thank you for that. Appreciate everybody's time. I'm trying to see. Okay, so one more, I did notice actually a couple of questions regarding what sort of search terms are generating the chat opportunity. And primarily it's branded terms, customer service related queries. But again, as we're testing this new ads entry point, that's where the brand would be able to identify what keywords trigger chat. Something we're investigating as a product and engineering team. We hope to grow in this space. We don't have a predefined list of terms, but I think that American Airlines baggage question wouldn't generate the opportunity to chat, but American Airlines customer service would. So we're working on things. It will continue to grow and evolve. So again, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate being here. And thank you, Beck, as well for presenting.
Thanks so much,
absolutely.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you, guys. And I think it's time for a lunch. I'm sorry, coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. As you could tell, I need my coffee. So we're going to take about a 10-minute break here. And I also want to let you guys know that we do have an expo area. And we have a sponsorship area. So you can go and check out both areas and play around, talk to some of the sponsors and check it out. So let me see if I can share my screen here with you guys. And so you can see what it looks like. Also, earlier there was echoing in Decentraland. It looks like one of the users turned on their microphone and they were rebroadcasting everything through their computer back into Decentraland and causing a wild loop. So thankfully that has ended. So if you're in Decentraland, make sure you turn off your microphone inside of Decentraland. Otherwise, it will just get a bad feedback. So that is working out really well. And everything's going great. We have almost a little over 200 people. So the rest of the day looks pretty exciting. We're going to pick back up at 10:55 with Ronald, and he's going to tell us about some exciting stuff. So without further ado, we're going to our coffee break now. Got mine ready.